What is up, guys? I wanted to make this video today that this time isn't about the UFC, and that's because there's an MMA organization in Asia called ONE FC that I think actually has better grapplers than the UFC. That's right, the Asian Dana White Chatri Sityodtong has been building and recruiting a roster full of some of the best grapplers in the world. First on my list, and one of the biggest names to go over, was Garry Tonon, who's been absolutely lighting up the featherweight division of ONE FC. Gary's an American grappler who's most famous for his electric EBI performances, where he won on 5 different occasions. He looked completely unstoppable at these events, winning in 3 different weight divisions and in the absolute. Gary, aka
your mother's favorite fighter, please welcome Garry Tonon.
Was one of the first to adopt the revolutionized no-gi leg lock game before it became the highly studied and emphasized system that it is today. He's also an ADCC and IBJJF world's medalist at the black belt level and was easily one of the most exciting fighters on the super fight scene because of his wrestle style that was just very scrambly and exciting to watch. No matter how big and scary his opponents were, and some of them were very scary, he always kept a relentless pace and just kept pushing forward just fearlessly. And this was all before he changed his focus to MMA, where he's gone 6-0 and never looked back. He's had 1 win by decision, 2 by TKO, and 3 by, well, you guessed it, submission. And Tonon has very noticeably made vast improvements in his striking game. At first, it was pretty sloppy and kind of wily, but it was clearly just to set up the takedown attempts. And this ultimately ended up being very effective even early on because his ground control was just so many light years ahead of everybody else's, especially early on in his first match and even his first few. But Gary has chosen to solely focus on MMA and has made striking his top priority. He's now made leaps and bounds of a difference in his striking, as is clear in his most recent win over number 3 ranked Kiyomi Matsushima. And he actually won all 3 rounds against Matsushima even when the fight was on the feet. Out of all the featherweights in the world right now, Garry Tonon is honestly my favorite to watch because he just goes out there and puts on such a show. Like, look at his last fight where he came out dressed literally like Joe Exotic, and after winning cut one of the best promos I've ever seen.
I'm Ripper, Terror, Slasher, Gouger. I am the teeth in the darkness, the talons in the night. I am all that is strength, lust, and power. I am Garry Tonon! I'm coming for the gold that you hoarded around your waist. It's mine.
Gary is now going into his 7th pro fight and is supposed to be fighting for the featherweight belt. This was supposed to be against Ton Lee at the end of 2021, but due to COVID and other complications, the fight had to be postponed and is still TBD at the moment. Yo, what's up, guys? Literally while editing this video, it was just announced that Garry Tonon will be taking on Ton Lee on March 11th for the featherweight championship, so that's going to be an awesome fight. Can't wait. Now, the next fighter I want to talk about is probably the biggest acquisition that ONE FC has ever had, and that's Marcus Almeida Buchecha. Buchecha is probably one of the most popular jiu-jitsu athletes, even against non-hardcore grappling fans. And that's for good reason, because he's literally the most accomplished IBJJF competitor of all time. He's even the Guinness World Record book with the record of the most world titles at 10, having surpassed Roger Gracie. Not to mention, he's also a multiple-time ADCC world champion in the over 99 kilogram division. He too has smoothly transitioned into MMA with ONE FC. Now, in the heavyweight division, you rarely ever see guys that can move like Buchecha does, which has made it look like a massive mismatch in his pro debut and now in his 2nd fight. Buchecha easily took down and choked out both of his opponents in under 3 minutes of the first round, making him 2-0 in MMA. And in his first fight, he actually submitted Anderson Silva. Okay, not the real Anderson Silva, it was just this guy. But ONE has historically not really had the deepest pool of heavyweight fighters. They're more known for the lighter weight classes. But either way, this is perfect for Buchecha, who's very new to the sport and just needs that entry-level competition before he can get to the bigger fights. What we should be focusing on is how great his execution and strategy has looked in these first 2 performances. I don't think he should be fast-tracked right to the top, but for the 32-year-old, the sky's the limit, and with a couple more wins that he could string together, he could be looking at some more higher stakes fights and eventually a title fight like we're seeing for Garry Tonon. Next up is another fighter I wanted to bring up in this video who's kind of like an honorable mention for this list, and that's Reinier De Ridder. He doesn't have even nearly the grappling accolades that the last 2 fighters had, aside from some silver medals at purple belt for the European World Championships. But the reason I bring him up is because he's 14-0 in MMA with 9 submission wins. And the way he won his last 2 fights, to me, makes him one of the most impressive grapplers in the entire sport. Both of these wins came over Ong Lan Sung for the middleweight title and shortly after for the light heavyweight title. The first time, De Ridder was defending his middleweight belt against Song and submitted him inside the first round. Now this was a huge upset that no one saw coming because Ong had been such an established champion 4-1 in the past. But De Ridder effortlessly took Song's back and rear naked choked him like it was just a Tuesday open mat. Then they had an immediate rematch at 205 pounds for the light heavyweight belt that Song was holding. But De Ridder put on a clinic in that fight and showed what to me was the single most impressive, dominant MMA grappling in a fight I have ever seen. Just watch some of these highlights and keep in mind that De Ridder was going up a weight class by 20 pounds to fight who was supposed to be one of the scariest fighters. For that reason, I had to put De Ridder in this video, and I had to mention that a dream matchup of mine would be to see De Ridder fight Israel Adesanya at 185. I truly think with how easily he took care of Song, and with how dominant overall he's been in his career, he might just be one of the last middleweights that could challenge Izzy for the belt. Now we're moving on to the most recent signing on this list, and that's Andre Galvao. Galvao is a living legend in the grappling world and has literally done everything there is to do in this sport. He has titles in IBJJF gi, no gi, ADCC, he's been all over the podium, and he's won 3 super fights. Actually, no, 4 super fights, which basically makes him the absolute champion of those years. But not only that, Galvao has been on top for such a long time, and he's actually medaled at every single ADCC since 2007. Outside of grappling, Galvao also had a short MMA career where he actually fought in organizations like Dream and Strikeforce. He was 5-2 in that time, and in his last fight, he actually got KO'd by Tyron Woodley in just under 3 minutes of the first round. However, all of that was back in 2010, and now at 39 years old, Galvao just recently announced that he's signing with ONE FC. It's a little bit unclear right now whether that contract consists of him doing grappling super fights or if he'll be giving MMA one last go. Either way, he's still very ambitious and says it's been a very long time since the last time he stepped in the cage, and he's made a lot of improvements and still thinks he has a long way to go with his career. Finally, and most excitingly, the best grappler in the world is also a recent signee with ONE FC, and that's none other than Gordon Ryan. Gordon is really somebody that needs no introduction, given that he's the face of grappling these days. The man is undefeated since 2016 and has pretty much submitted anybody you put in front of him in those last 6 years. At only 26 years old, he's almost unanimously considered the best to ever do it, and has won multiple ADCC championships, an IBJJF no-gi title, and won super fights against the who's who of grappling for the longest amount of time. Gordon signed with one and was supposed to take on Shinya Aoki in a grappling match back in August of 2021. But due to severe stomach issues, Gordon was sidelined from this competition and even from training for most of 2021. He's really been out since then, but he's hopeful that he'll be able to make a return for the championships of ADCC in September of 2022, where of course he'll face off in the super fight against Galvao, as well as hopefully compete in the over 99 kilogram division for the first time that's ever been done in history. Gordon and Galvao obviously have some history and do not like each other. But this signing with ONE FC makes things very interesting. Both have expressed some interest in MMA, and now that they're both signed with ONE FC, you can't help but speculate that a fight could be coming with 8-ounce gloves in the squared circle sometime soon. Either way, Gordon has to recover first to be healthy enough for ADCC before any of that can happen. I can't even imagine what it'd be like to see Gordon or Andre in the cage, but if it's anything like the transition of these other world-class grapplers, it's going to be something beautiful. In closing, each of these fighters is very highly touted in Jiu-Jitsu, which has made the transitions into MMA something to behold. Usually when we see a specialist move into MMA, their game is a little bit too one-sided and they struggle. But these guys are already exceptional athletes at the very top of the grappling game. We know that historically grappling is such an effective style in the sport to begin with, and it's so interesting to see that even in 2022 we're still seeing such a high rate of victories from these jiu-jitsu guys that have solely focused on jiu-jitsu their entire lives, can come into MMA, fight top level guys, and get consistent finishes, which of course is the most entertaining thing that a fight fan can ask for. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this list. If you did, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this to come.